Hello everyone, welcome! Prof.Geaver here, and we're here for Trails in the Sky, a brief recap. So, Trails is a very special series to me, and it is one that I've just gotten into over these past 2 years, and I am so excited to have gotten to know this wonderful series. It's genuinely risen to be one of my favorite series of all time, on par with Xeno, and Pokemon and Fire Emblem and all these sorts. So as I've been doing my playthrough of Trails Through Daybreak, which is the, I believe, 11th game, or 12th, one of the two, I wanted to have a sort of series that helps get people caught up if they don't have the time, space, or resources to play the older games, or maybe inspire people to check them out. As these are brief recaps, they are going through quite enough detail. However, I'm not going to be able to cover everything. For this video, we're going to be covering Trails in the Sky FC. So, this is a legendary series created by Nihon Falcom, a development studio that Tetsuya Takahashi of Xeno Acclaim worked at, notably 2 years before he joined up with Square in 1990. And before we can talk about Trails, we have to talk about Dragon Slayer. And this was the forefather of the action RPG genre. Dragon Slayer would eventually create a spin-off title called Dragon Slayer: The Legend of Heroes, and this is notably one of Tetsuya Takahashi's first full credits as an artist. Fun fact. I'm bringing up Takahashi because Xeno is hugely similar in design to Trails for world building, but Trails takes its own aspects and goes a whole nother step further. I like to think of Trails as what Xenogears would have been if it were allowed to continue at Square. And I bring up Takahashi not to demean anyone who created on and worked on Trails, but more so because I know a lot of people know Xeno but don't as much know Trails. So people who do know Xeno and do like Xeno will probably like the events that we talk about in Trails, so that's why I bring them up. And from the Dragon Slayer Legend of Heroes game, we also get this to become at its own series, which we're almost at Trails. Give me a sec. So, this is the release schedule of the Legend of Heroes series, which Trails is a sub-series in. If we take this information here, the Dragon Slayer had a sequel, Dragon Slayer Legend of Heroes 2. Then we also have Legend of Heroes 2 Prophecy of the Moonlight Witch, A Tear of Vermilion, and Song of the Ocean. These are known as the Gagard Trilogy, and they are collectively Legend of Heroes 3, 4, and 5 in Japan. Then Trails in the Sky, the whole trilogy of it, is collectively Legend of Heroes 6. Then we go on to Trails from Zero, Trails to Azure, which is collectively Legend of Heroes 7. Legend of Heroes is still part of the name of this series, like it appears on Trails Through Daybreak. The mastermind behind all of this, who we'll talk about in a second, has commented on the fact that they don't really use the Legend of Heroes aspect of the name at the moment, because typically it goes by Trails, or in Japanese, the Kiseki name, like with a Kai no Kiseki here. Each arc has a designation, no Kiseki. There is a wonderful video by Luxon that breaks down every single title and the deeper meanings behind that. I will be mentioning some of these as we go along, but check out that Luxon video, it's in the description. Really fantastic work by him. For the purposes of this recap series, we're not going to be covering anything with Demon Slayer, or Dragon Slayer, anything with the Gagard trilogy. So we're going to be starting with Trails in the Sky, and then to be working our way up to eventually Kai no Kiseki. So, who is the mastermind behind all this? Enter Toshihiro Kondo. He started out as a fan of the Legend of Heroes series, creating his own fan site for the Legend of Heroes 3 called The Saga of Terrace Wheel. He was such a big fan that he reached out to Falcom to apply for a position. Then he went on to work on Legend of Heroes 4 and 5, as well as Falcom's other Starship series, Ys. He was then given the chance to direct his own titles, both in Ys and the Legend of Heroes, so he began on what would become Legend of Heroes 6. Notably though, he, as a new director, bit off more than he could chew, and ended up making a story that was a bit too big to fit into a single game. Tell me where you've heard this story before. However, unlike with Xenogears, the solution that Falcom gave him was just make more games. I say that as if it's super easy to just do that. Obviously budgets are things, and games need to be greenlit, and all of that sort of thing. But it's just so funny that this is the, I'm going to say it's the good future Xenogears, where a game needs more room to tell the story it wants to tell, and so they're like, yeah, just tell it in more games. Trails in the Sky was allowed to be made, and made again in 2 separate chapters that are full games in and of itself, dubbed FC and SC. Though SC and the sequel Trails in the Sky 3rd are collectively known as The Legend of Heroes 6, but that's just at the point where that stopped becoming the series identifier, as Trails and Kiseki in the original Japanese becomes the new series identifier, as they hold no relation to any other Legend of Heroes game, but the Trails games very notably have a lot to do with every other Trails game. So, Trails tells a continuous story across a major continent, more on the continent in a second. This graph here is a bit old, but it works because the last title on here, Kira no Kiseki, is the latest title to receive an English translation, Trails Through Daybreak. But here we get a general gist of how things go. Now, you may see that some of the games take place during the same year, such as Cold Steel 2, and Azure here. This means you'll be seeing, in-game, many events will be happening at once in each game, and you'll get to see these 2 different nations that you're playing in both the Cold Steel series and the Azure AIM-0 duology. You can see how different nations are reacting to the same events from different points of view, and it's super cool. But first, we're just going to be starting off with Trails in the Sky. I just wanted to point this out so we can get a general timeline. This is also my recommended play order. Everybody's going to have their own thought and feeling on what game is best to start as a play order. Generally, it's best to start at the beginning of an arc, and so that would be Trails in the Sky FC, Trails from Zero, Trails of Cold Steel 1, or Kira no Kiseki, or Trails Through Daybreak. These are the games that are easiest to get into because they don't fully expect you to have previous knowledge of previous games at the start. There will be cameos and such for anything after Sky to previous works, just because that's how the story works. But these games are the best way to get into the series, and then work your way around. Definitely try to stay away from Cold Steel 2, Cold Steel 3, Cold Steel 4, Reverie, because that Reverie is like a huge tie-up game for all of these other ones. Sky SC, Sky the Third, these ones directly work off of Trail in the Sky FC's ending, so you're going to get pretty big spoilers for the later games if you start with them for the previous games in their series. So this is the map of Zemuria. This is the continent that we are working with, and various games are going to be focusing on different aspects of this continent. This area in black is area that we do not know anything about to this current day, to current release. And this map used to look a lot different because more of this area was shaded and unknown to us. So we've really expanded out. For the purposes of this recap, we're going to focus on this western half of Zemuria, and largely with this southern peninsula, this liberal kingdom. And we're going to be seeing some events play out from the Erebonian Empire, and the Crossbell State are going to be mentioned quite a bit, as well as the Calvard Republic, which is back here. These 4 groups, 4, are the largest settings for these games. But for the sake of Sky, we're largely just going to be dealing with the Kingdom and the Empire, as these are 2 nations that have fought one another. And this is a series that's been going on for so long. We have a lot of different playable main characters across the arc. So this is just a quick visual of some of these main characters. We have these 3 from the Liberal section. We have also these 2 right here who are from Trails in the Sky the Third. We have a group of 2 characters from the Crossbell games, 2 characters from the Erebonian games. These 2 right here are from Trails into Reverie specifically, and then we have some of the Calvardian folks from Trails Through Daybreak. So we'll be seeing a lot of these faces throughout the series, but right now we're going to be focusing on the Liberal section. So, the actual video game, I know that was a lot, but Trails is very, very dense with its world building. Dense is not the right word, but very expansive in its world building, and lots of things are mentioned early on that come back to play much later, and even not so much later. So I just wanted to prep us for what we're going to be getting into. We begin in a small village in the kingdom of Liberal called Roland. A man named Cassius Bright lives alone here with his young daughter, Estelle Bright, and one night after Cassius returns home from work, he comes bearing a gift. But Estelle is a bit confused of why said gift is a boy about her own age. The boy, Joshua, is visibly injured and eventually adopted into the Bright family, but it's clear there's more to the story, and Estelle doesn't know how this came about, but the two cohabitate for a number of years, and our story picks up when the two are 16 years old. So, Estelle Bright, she is the spunky, energetic heroine, and the main protagonist of this in the next game. She's a bit quick to say what she's thinking, and sometimes doesn't think plans all the way through, but she has a very kind heart and wants to see things made right whenever possible. Her mother passed away 10 years ago during a conflict between the Kingdom of Liberal and the Empire of Erebonia, where Erebonia carpet-bombed Roland. This event is known as the 100 Days War, and it is said that a lot of the situations surrounding the beginning of this war are hidden by political interruption. So lots of political things happening, and one result of this is Estelle's mother being killed in this attack. She has a passion for whacking things she dislikes, the enemies, and with her staff, and she has many of the funniest lines in the entire game. Here's a collection of such. She is a really spunky character that has a lot of good one-liners, and they're fantastic. I recommend you pause and scope this around because we're going to move on. And Joshua Bright, the adoptive brother of Estelle, he's a bit more quiet and analytical, but what shows immense prowess with his dual blades. As a young child, he was very troubled given the mysterious circumstances that he was adopted into the Bright family under, but he's grown to appreciate both Cassius and Estelle, and even if he has to rein in Estelle's more hasty tendencies. He enjoys playing the harmonica and reading, tending to be more of an introvert compared to Estelle. Next, we have Cassius Bright. He used to serve in the Liberal's Kingdom military, but certain events caused him to leave and join what is known as the Bracers Guild. Bracers are volunteers who sign up to assist their local region with all manners of requests that the police and or military are unable to assist with. The Bracers Guild is sort of similar to the Adventurers Guild that most other RPG or fantasy worlds have. They are a separate faction that are unregulated as a unit. They regulate themselves, they're unregulated. They deal with quests, basically. And Cassius is notable as he's one of the few S-rank bracers around, as he's gone all across Liberal at various bracer guilds and has gotten recommendation after recommendation for his fine work. It was on one of his bracer jobs that he encountered Joshua and took him in, but more details surrounding that event are scarce. And his wife Lena passed away 10 years ago due to the Empire's attack on Rouen. As we begin on the now 16-year-old Estelle and Joshua, they are training to become bracers themselves and are sent into Rouen to perform their final exam before they can officially join the guild as junior bracers. This test is administered by their mentor, A-rank bracer Sherazard Harvey. Now, Shara, also known as the Silver Streak, is an A-rank bracer that joined the Roland Bracer Guild after the disbanding of the circus troupe that she'd grown up in, and she was very obviously distraught at this. Her troupe had traveled throughout Liberal often, visiting Roland and meeting Cassius and his wife, Lena, and their daughter Estelle. When the troupe disbanded, she struggled to return to Roland and sought help from Cassius, who took her on as her mentor. She loves to drink and is generally very nice, but she has a strict side and is always fair in her judgments. She is the first of this game's rotating cast of party members, and this is where this game and Trails in the Sky SC's difficulty is a little bit different than every other Trails game, as your main party consists of Estelle and Joshua. However, throughout each of the chapters you get a set number of rotating party members until the very end where everyone kind of comes together. So you are always going to be feeling pretty underprepared for a lot of situations because you are just starting out, and Estelle and Joshua aren't the greatest in combat to start off with, considering they are newbies. And I think it's interesting that the difficulty is handled this way because there aren't a lot of different difficulty options to start off with Sky and Sky SC. Whereas much later on in the series, you'll pretty much always have a full party of party members that are permanent throughout the entirety of the game. Otherwise, multiple parties as perspectives change. So that is an interesting thing to point out here. So a quick history lesson. Shara uses the final exam to both test our gameplay prowess by sending us on a side quest to gather 2 boxes in the nearby sewers, but also give us the player a lowdown on the recent history of the current political situation with the Empire, among other important details. So initially I had a whole thing typed up about this, but during this PowerPoint, as I was initially making it, I discovered that Trails in the Sky SC has a full-ass movie, or OVA, made about it, and the opening scene explains it better than I did. So here we go, I'm wheeling in the big old TV.
Augment. Bracers. The story of an unfolding era. The continent of Zemuria. A new era follows the Orbital Revolution. The people are supported by technology that comes to be called Augment and enjoy lives of prosperity. Beyond this idyllic existence, however, weapons utilizing Augment continue to be researched and developed, and the motives of those in power overlap. The face of the continent is one of chaos. However, in the midst of that chaos, a small, proud realm retained its independence. Liberal Kingdom. 10 years ago, it sustained an attack by the Erebonian Empire, dubbed the 100 Days War. But this small kingdom is rebuilt and thriving, and now, a conspiracy that will envelop the world is attempting to gain momentum.
Being back here, the one bit I need to... the elephant in the room I need to talk about is the father of the Orbital Revolution, the person who first worked toward this technology. His name has not aged well in the global scale of this thing. I want to mention that this character was created in 2004 when Sky first came out, so obviously we did not have current context of how controversial the person associated with this name would be, but the person's name is Professor Claude Epstein, or Epstein. It's tough because there are events I can't talk about now that make this worse, but Epstein, unfortunately, is a very, very important character who is going to be brought up for the rest of this series. We're just going to have to deal with it. So, anyway, moving forward. So, after the successful test and becoming embracers, Joshua and Estelle return home to Cassius, who has received a missive from the Empire, prompting him to leave the next morning by airship, which means that while he is gone, he's going to be delegating the Guild's missions he's been tasked to do, both to Shara and the two newbies. They see Cassius off the next morning, and he says it'll probably be about a month before he's able to return. Estelle and Joshua begin working on the tasks delegated to them and begin the flow of gameplay. Some of these tasks involve exterminating some monsters at a nearby farm, and helping some miners transport a large separate crystal to the mayor of Roland. When delivering the crystal, the duo meet a student of the Genus Royal Academy named Josette, who is polite enough, and leaves as the mayor stores the crystal in his vault. Another request is helping some reporters named Niall and Dorothy reach the top of a nearby tower to get the big scoop on its mysteries. So we have a bit of an escort mission as the pair trudge off the monsters that come their way. Here they meet a strange man who introduces himself as Professor Elba at the top, who explains to the group that there are towers of these all across Liberal. There we go, I fixed that. All across Liberal that were built during the kingdom's inception, but all have since been abandoned. The group commends the professor for having gotten up the tower unscathed, but scolded him to exercise more caution in the future. The professor does mention he was studying the Septarians, an ancient race that was lost 1200 years ago, as his reasoning for coming to the tower, and that he believes the Septarian named the Oriole must be sleeping dormant somewhere within Liberal. This news is of course exciting for Dorothy and Niall, so they can make their article. As Estelle and Joshua return to the guild to inform them of the completion of their work, the mayor comes in a panic, stating that the crystal they delivered had been stolen, and his residence had been ransacked. Upon investigating the scene of the crime, Estelle and Joshua deduce that the girl they met, Josette, must have done the deed given the state of how it was stored away. Shara then joins up with the group to help chase down Josette. We then find them hiding away in the forest outside of Relent, where during a confrontation, they learn that Josette was posing as a student of the Academy, and is instead a member of the Capua family Sky Pirates. Now, the Capua City Sky Pirates, not Capua City, the Capua Sky Pirates, we'll be seeing these guys more and more throughout the series, but basically they're a crime family who seems to have more about them under the surface. Unfortunately, after Estelle, Joshua, and Sharon manage to apprehend Josette, her brothers Kyle and Don manage to rescue her and their lackeys via their airship. They are, however, successful in retrieving the crystal, which puts the mayor at ease, as it was intended to be a gift for the queen. Shara commends the pair for a job well done, and gives them a recommendation from the Roland branch of the Bracers Guild, then telling them that if they want to be senior Bracers, they must travel across the kingdom and receive recommendations from the other guilds located in Bose, Rouen, Zeiss, and Grancel. The pair are excited to travel, but news comes in via orbital phone that the Linde, the ship Cassius had been traveling aboard, has been reported as missing, having disappeared over the Bose region, which causes concern for everyone. There is no further news, and so with the added mission on trying to figure out what happened to their father, Joshua, Estelle, and Shara all vote to travel to Bose. Since the Army is investigating the incident, air traffic has been highly monitored and limited, so the trio will have to travel on foot. Upon reaching Bose, they were repeatedly told to not interfere with the Army's investigation, as there was a bit of conflict between the Army and the Bracers Guild, more like the Army is a bit of a priss when it comes to the Bracers doing their jobs. As it turns out, the general of the Army is an old war hero who was on the front lines of the attack from the Empire 10 years ago, but he also has no love for the Bracers, as he used to be Cassius' supervising officer. He has held a grudge over the Bracer Guild because of Cassius' leaving the military after the passing of his wife. However, the group attempts to get information anyway, as the mayor of the Bose region has some authority in the region and has requested assistance from the Bracers. While waiting to meet with General Morgan, and this meeting does not go well, Estelle, Joshua, and Shara meet an interesting man at the Army's gate. This is Olivier Lenheim. Olivier is a bard who flirts with anything that has legs, although he seems less than serious in his musings if he knows he can pester them, as he chooses to do with Estelle. He joins up with the group to meet the general without their permission because he thinks it'll be a good time. He has a quick wit and a sharp tongue and will eventually be our next shifting party member, but not quite yet. Continuing on, after some more side quests and helping the people of Bose, including investigating Bose's Sapphire Tower, where we meet back with Professor Alba again, who's yet again got himself into some mischief while trying to investigate Liberal's ancient artifacts, we learn that the Capua Sky Pirates seem to have been responsible for the hijacking. So we need to discover where their new hideout is in order to investigate further. We are, however, halted by the Army and jailed when we're seen as overstepping into the Army's investigation, and find that Olivier has also been jailed, but instead it's for drinking an antique wine as a supposed payment for his bard services at an upscale restaurant in Bose. The mayor bails them out, Olivier included, and tasks him to help out to make up for the amount that he drank. Estelle, Joshua, and Shara hesitantly accept his help, understanding that more members are needed against this crime family. Next up, we also get to meet Colonel Alan Richard. The group, while investigating a string of robberies in Bose, run into the colonel of the intelligence division of Liberal's army, Alan Richard. He is much more pleasant to deal with, and he respects the Bracers Guild and how they can do the work the army can't necessarily. It's with his assistance that the group can learn more information that'll help them deduce where they can stake out the Capua's hiding place. Estelle, Joshua, Shara, and Olivier head to the lake in Bose's south where a fishing inn rests, and wait till nightfall to spy on a meeting between the Capuas and a hidden mask force. But before then, they have the day to spend before the night falls, and Olivier and Shara begin drinking together. She manages to drink him under the table, hoping to knock him out so they don't have to deal with it. A plan that almost works, but Olivier is Olivier. And Estelle and Joshua have a moment alone to collect their thoughts and reassure each other on their mission. Now, after the meeting, this isn't specifically after, but it does happen while we're in Bose, and it is introducing an important character, but we do run into this red-haired man known as Agate Crossman, a C-rank bracer who's a bit of a dick to us, but we learned that he was visiting a gravesite at the Ravenu village nearby. Now, actually after the meeting, we managed to find the Capua's airship parked in, and we sneak aboard so we can take it back to their hideout. We managed to infiltrate inside and find the hostages of Linde, but Estelle and Joshua's father is nowhere to be found within. It is here that we learn that the Capuas, also at least Josette and Kyle, are looking to let the hostages free once the Queen pays the ransom, so they can finally quit the pirate lifestyle. However, Dom, the eldest, seems to disagree with this plan, and offers to kill them once they get the ransom. It is implied Don does not seem to be himself, and after we beat them over the head with our stick, he seems to have no memory of his more violent ways, implying something must have been influencing him. Doesn't matter for now though, boys get locked up. They then try for one last ditch escape effort, but Colonel Alan Richard manages to circumvent their escape and, yep, they get locked up. As the hostages are rescued, the staff who manned the ship reveal that Cassius was actually never on the ship when it took off. He'd been on when the group took him to the airport, but after they left, he got off the ship and his whereabouts are still unknown. In a conversation Shara overhears Olivier having someone on the phone, he reveals he had traveled to the Liberal from the Empire specifically to search for Cassius' brother. Cassius does have a letter sent to his children, but the letter had been absconded with the ship when it was hijacked, but now that they have it, the two learn that Cassius is sorry for tricking them. But he has important business he can't talk much about, and it'll be a few more months until he'll return. He suggests that the two begin their journey to become senior bracers, and also gives them a strange package that was addressed to him from an unknown sender, an orbment device that seems to be obtained through mysterious methods, with a note, not signed by him, stating, I was able to secure the item the aforesaid group was carrying, so please take care of it. Please ask Professor R to do an analysis of it when you find the opportunity. Okay. Whew, so all of that, we are at the end of Chapter 1. We are only just getting started. So back in Bose, after this kerfuffle, the group groups in the Bracer Guild, even Olivier because he loves tagging along, and Estelle and Joshua are given recommendations from the Bose Guild for their great achievement. Shara and Olivier split from the group, Olivier because he was searching for Cassis in the first place, and Shara because she needs to return to the Roland branch as she's already a senior bracer. Estelle and Joshua plan to head on to Rouen, but stop in a small village called Minoria where they encounter a young girl with purple hair, and similar clothes to the disguise that Josette had on, meaning that she's an actual student of the Genus Royal Academy. This is Chloe Rins. She's a kind and caring girl and can be a bit timid. She's going to be one of our next new party members, but like Olivier, it isn't right away. She's an absolute monster though. Her magical prowess is insane, and it just goes to show you, it's always the school kids that have the nukes on hand. She helps assist the local orphanage in her spare time, and throughout this chapter it's hinted she has a bit of a crush on Joshua, but chooses to hold back on those feelings. Which brings me to the elephant in the room. So, yes, there is a sort of budding romance that we get to see in the downtime throughout side quests and through their conversations between Estelle and Joshua, and this is something that's going to be building over the course of the story. It is a bit weird normally to have two people who are raised as a family dynamic to have other feelings for one another. I will say it is better portrayed than it seems, and I know that's the trust me Wade, it's not as it seems, but I think that the relationship and dynamic that Estelle and Joshua have throughout the games is well earned because they are two people who care for each other, and they initially are feeling a type of way about those kinds of feelings because they are 16. They were not raised together from birth. It was, as they were both like kids, it's very clear that Joshua was adopted into like this family. So I'm just gonna say I understand the hesitation that some people may have. Let them cook, because this dynamic, I would say, is well earned. Now, if there was any dynamic between characters introduced in this game that give concern, I would say we've not met the worst yet. So, anyway, back to Chloe. She needs help finding an orphan who's a bit mischievous, and Estelle and Joshua help her out. Here we discover Chloe's also a falconeer and has a trained falcon named C, who she communicates with for information. In exchange for their help, Chloe helps escort the two junior bracers to Rouen, getting to know them more along the way. Rouen itself is a port town with a big bridge at the center. Estelle and Joshua help break up some gang activity from the local group called the Ravens after they registered with the new guild, and they're also met with the mayor of Rouen, who tells them they're lucky to have made it, as they are also expecting royalty in Rouen very shortly. That a relative of the Queen of Liberal is visiting Rouen, stoking excitement. So now, upon entering Rouen, Chloe leaves to the academy, and Estelle and Joshua try to find lodgings for the night, and luckily enough, the normally fully booked resort hotel has a penthouse suite that's just opened up. So as they're about to go to sleep until Wario here enters the room and demands they leave as he is royalty, and thus deserves to have the room. Given the situation has no real good ending, if they fight back, they acquiesce, and the staff apologize for his brutish behavior. But luckily enough, Niall, our reporter friend, sees the both of them and offers a spare room next to his in the basement, as he's here in Rouen chasing another scoop. The pair agree and mumble-grumble against the big old dum-dum. His name is Dunan, but that doesn't matter right now. As they return to the guild to report, they get an emergency missive that the orphanage is burned to the ground. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but the children and matron have been displaced to Minoria while an investigation is done, where it is clear that the fire was started intentionally. Now, back at the guild, Agate arrives, and he's a bit of a dick to us still, saying we're still juniors and he can handle finding the arsonist himself. He takes both of Estelle and Joshua off the case for being too close to the situation, and for dragging a civilian, being Chloe, into the fray. Unfortunately, the bratty kid that Estelle, Joshua, and Chloe had trouble finding with before decides he's going to take revenge on the Ravens, who he believes started the fire, and storms into their base, causing Estelle, Joshua, and Chloe to go in and save him. but it isn't until Agate shows up and gives the revelation that he used to be a Raven that they finally back off. Now Chloe, having felt bad at involving Estelle and Joshua in so many of her own requests, offered to give the pair a break by offering a lower stakes job, an acting role in each of her academy's play and assistance in production. The group, having nothing else to report on, given that they were taken off of the arson case, agreed, head to the academy. This part of the chapter is this is where that part in Cold Steel comes from, as you get to explore Military Academy much in the same way that you do in that series, down to the investigate the old abandoned schoolhouse that's full of monsters thing that we'll cover there in due course. Anyway, the play is a vie for a love story where Chloe and Estelle will be playing two handsome knights vying for the princess's hand, being played by Joshua. And if you don't believe me, yes, this is real and it's fantastic. Now, while the show is going on, a certain someone is in the audience. Joshua gets a glance at him, and after the show, trails off to try to find him, but loses his tracks. The play has also amassed a massive mirror donation to rebuild the orphanage, but unfortunately the money ends up going missing, with the leading theory is that it was stolen. Agate returns on the scene to say there must be a connection between the arson and the theft, as they both relate to the orphanage. Now, everyone's favorite, character. It's Agate. He's a C-ranked bracer dubbed the Heavy Blade, and he was the former head of the Ravens. He's considered the jerk with the heart of gold and is pretty strong in combat. Now, I don't really have any problem with Agate himself. It's just how characters react to Agate and Tita. Lots of characters in universe tend to ship the two of them, and that is very no bueno. Agate himself does not have this issue, which is good, but it's not that much better when a notable amount of characters are making comments. Now, investigating with Agate leads them to the Seaside Lighthouse, which has been overrun with a local gang, but the members themselves seem hypnotized and stronger than normal. At the top of the lighthouse, we learn that the arson and theft were caused by the mayor of Ruan and his steward Gilbert, as the intent was to repurpose the land the orphanage is on. After beating the masked men, they turn on the steward and make him enact a Family Guy skit with their bullets, and the steward is apprehended when he tries to escape. Keep this guy in mind, he's going to show back up, and back up, and back up. Unfortunately, politics be as it may, tying the crime to the mayor himself is tricky though, with nobody having full clue, suggesting help from the royal army. Chloe sends a letter via Sieg to who knows where, that'll come back around, and the guild plans for all of this while Estelle and Joshua buy them time to organize by questioning the mayor himself, but find he's in company with Duke Dunan talking about all the kinds of renovations they're going to do with the land. While we're doing this with the mayor, here's Agate chasing the remnants of the masked men. And I just want to give credit to YouTube user Sunset Deska for this footage. I'm going to be supplying us with some supplementary clips now and then, and I want to give credit to those who have gone out of their way to record and upload this footage, as I've done replaythroughs of this game, but I'm not always able to record every single minute of every single aspect of the gameplay, so thank you, Sunset Deska. Now, in response to Joshua and Estelle questioning the mayor, he responds very well to these accusations of being behind everything. And upon losing a fight with the little guard dogs he sends out here, he pulls out an artifact that freezes them in time, and he calls it the Kronos Rod. It is an artifact which happens to be a family heirloom, and as he's about to shoot us point blank, the orbment that we got from Cassius from the unknown sender emits its own light and cancels out the Kronos Rod. And the mayor then skedaddles out and escapes via boat, and just as we are about to believe that he's gotten away, nobody expects the liberal Inquisition. And the army has finally caught up with him and stops him in his tracks. And similar to Don Capua, the mayor has a similar sense of not remembering any of his recent actions, and his demeanor seems to be genuine. But boy's still getting locked up. This is also where we fully meet First Lieutenant Schwartz in the army, and we also meet back up here with Colonel Richard. He appears on the scene and congratulates Estelle and Joshua for a job well done, but is confused why the Royal Guard had gotten there before the army had. And upon returning to the guild, Estelle and Joshua learn that Agate hadn't been able to catch up to the leader of the masked men as he was ambushed in the interim, being the scene that we saw. The guild leader then suggests that they want to know more about the mysterious orbment, they should visit Zeiss, as it's a city famous for the manufacturing of orbments. With this, they also receive their Ruan recommendation and split from Chloe as they make their way to Zeiss. However, Chloe does mention that she is going to be making her way to Grand Cell in a month for the Queen's birthday. Funnily enough, this was around the deadline when Cassius said he'd be finished with his own mission. And we finish off Chapter 2. Next, we're going to celebrate with this meme from the Crossbell arc, because it's really good. There are investigations in this game, but it fits best with the SSS crew. We'll be meeting them soon enough. Now, Chapter 3, heading to Zeiss. As the two walk towards Zeiss, they bump into a girl with blonde hair, and they keep an eye on her before defending her from some monsters. This girl's name is Tita, and she actually works for the Zeiss Central Factory, so she guides them toward the city of Zeiss before returning to her work. This is Tita Russell. She's a young child who loves tinkering with machines due to her family's inclination towards the mechanical. Sort of like Poppy from Xenoblade 2, where a person in terms of character type, pretty overall weak but has her own strengths in combat. And she's also our new beginning party member for this chapter. Now entering Zeiss, we meet up with Kilika, the guild receptionist who writes a letter of introduction to the head of the Zeiss Central Factory. The two meet up with Murdoch and show him the orbment and the letter that we were given, and he recognizes that Professor R is Professor Russell, and Tita's grandfather, and sends them to meet him. Now Tita is the granddaughter of Professor Russell, so she takes them to her home and tries to introduce them to her grandfather, but the man is a workaholic, so he ignores this at first. And one thing to note about Professor Russell is he is one of the 3 noted disciples of Claude Epstein, who is the father of the Orbital Revolution. Professor Russell is very notable in Liberl by himself as having fathered the Orbital Revolution in Liberl. So very, very smart man. Eventually, Professor Russell begins to examine the orbit until it activates like last time, when the Ruan Mayor Delmore almost shot Estelle and Joshua, but this time all of the orbit technology in the city turns off. The analysis is abandoned, which causes the orbits to reactivate, and Professor Russell referred to the effect as the orbital shutdown phenomenon. Now, while trying to saw open the Orbont, Murdoch interrupts the group, informing them that a pump at Elmo Village is broken down and requires immediate repairs. Tita persists that she knows how to fix the pump, so Estelle and Joshua assist in escorting her to the village. While there, Tita fixes the pipe, and the innkeeper Mao offers the group to stay overnight for free. They take her up on their offer and return to Zeiss the next morning. Here we get some downtime with Tita, and she takes the opportunity to make comments toward Estelle and Joshua, how they seem more like boyfriend-girlfriend than brother-sister, which causes the exact kind of embarrassment you expect from both parties. However, upon returning, they notice the Zeiss Central Factory is filled with smoke, and it turns out Professor Russell is missing. Agate then appears to help in the search where they see Professor Russell being kidnapped by familiar-looking masked men from the previous chapter. After the masked men disappear without a trace, Estelle and Joshua obtain a lead from Professor Elba mentioning how he saw suspicious figures at Carnelia Tower. Tita wishes to come along, but Agate dismisses her as she's only a 12-year-old girl who would most likely get in the way. The three make their way to the top of the tower and fight against the masked men, noting that the leader who wears a red mask is absent from the fray. But while trying to save Professor Russell, Tita appears and Agate leaps in front of her, defending her from an incoming bullet. The masked men are able to use the confusion to get away with Professor Russell, and then, well, you can't see it because PowerPoint doesn't allow GIFs, but Agate slaps Tita here for getting in the way and putting herself in danger. And immediate karma from this, on the way back to Zeiss, the group bump into a fellow bracer from the Calvert Republic named Jin before Agate begins to pass out. They rush Agate back to Zeiss and find out the bullet he was shot with was laced with a poison. Although not a cure, if the group can obtain Zemurian moss, Agate should live. Jin agrees to help the group and they succeed in obtaining it. And Jin here is from the Calvert Republic. He is a bracer, much like we are. He's just from that area. So we'll be seeing a lot of him when we dive into Calvert stuff, but we meet him here first. Also of note, the PSP version, his name was actually not translated correctly, or they gave him a different name in the localization. They called him Zane, and they kept that in Sky SC, but then they changed it to the intended Jin, and for the longest time I called him Zin, because I did not know how to pronounce it, and it wasn't until he reappears later in a voice-acted game where I learned it was Jin. So yeah, his name is Jin, and a similar thing happened with Chloe, where in certain localizations that we'll be talking about later on, her name was translated to Close. Don't like either of these compared to the ones we have officially, so that's something. Now the next day, Killick informs the group that their army has abandoned their investigation on kidnapping of Professor Russell, and suspicious of this, the reporter Dorothy then shows the group a photo of an airship that resembled the aircraft that the men used to kidnap Professor Russell on top of Carnelia Tower. Suspiciously enough, though, the ship was near the Leiston Fortress. With this, Estelle, Joshua, Agate, and Tita infiltrate the fortress and capture Colonel Richard without questioning Professor Russell on how the Black Orbit works. Here we get the official title of it being The Gospel. After saving Professor Russell, the group rushes for an exit, but thanks to Major Sid, they manage to escape. While outside, the group split up where Professor Russell requests Estelle and Joshua head to Grancel to inform the Queen what Colonel Richard is up to. Now we get the end of Chapter 3, and moving on, we have only one more chapter to go through for the rest of this game. So, let's go on. Now, Estelle and Joshua are given their Zeiss recommendation for breaking the Professor out, and thus begin their trek to Grancel, separating from Agate and Tita, who go into hiding with the Professor. Though, in another point of view, we can see that Chloe has been apprehended by Colonel Richard. Now, while trying to get to Grancel, Estelle and Joshua learn of a fighting tournament in Grancel, but also that bracers are currently being detained for being suspicious persons as a direct order from the Intelligence Division. They are stopped, but thanks to Professor Elba's assistance, they are able to sneak through. While investigating the two, they find out that the Queen is currently ill, and thus Duke Dunan and Colonel Richard have split responsibility. And while watching the fighting tournament, they find out that the prize is an invitation to the royal dinner party. Estelle and Joshua join Jin's team, as this would be the only opportunity for them to get into the castle to meet with Her Highness. Jin agrees for the two to join him, but recommends they find a fourth member. With perfect timing, Olivier offers to help them, and in between rounds, Estelle and Joshua meet with Niall and inform him of Colonel Richard's doings in the previous chapter. Niall suspects that he's been pulling the strings from behind the scene since the beginning and decides to investigate the matter later. Now, we're going to talk about Jin just a little bit more since he's officially becoming a party member at this point. He's an old acquaintance of Cassius and Cher's, and he's an A-rank bracer who's kind of similar to Xenogears' Fei Fang Wang in visual design and combat style. He's a big brother figure to many folks, and he loves to drink as much as Cher does. He also has a relationship with Kilika the Bracer, guild operator, as we've seen before, but we'll get more into that later on. After some more battles, Niall shares all the information regarding Colonel Richard, Captain Amathea, and Second Lieutenant Lawrence. Richard used to study under Cassius when he was a colonel, and since becoming colonel, Richard was appointed Lawrence as a lieutenant as he was a skilled warrior known as a Jaeger. These will be an important concept for the rest of the series. Consider them extrajudicial soldiers of extreme strength. And later that night, Estelle and Joshua are given a letter to meet with someone at the cathedral. This turns out to be First Lieutenant Schwarz, who we met at the end of Chapter 2. She gives the letter to the two and requests to give said letter to the head maid Hilda, who can assist with organizing a meeting with the Queen. The final round of the tournament begins, and Estelle's group faces off against Lieutenant Lorenz's team of Jaegers, but are victorious. Though before the group can make their way to the castle, Olivia is driven away by Major Vander, as to prevent an international scandal, as Erebonia and the Burl's relationship is already strained as it is, implying Olivier has more of a connection to the Empire as he previously let on. While at the castle, Estelle and Joshua manage to find Hilda and give her the letter before they meet in private to plan how she can arrange a meeting. Ultimately, Hilda dresses the two up in maid outfits, to Joshua's dismay, to meet with the Queen. Finally, in Her Highness's presence, Estelle and Joshua are able to share everything they learned about Colonel Richard. Queen Alicia informs the two about the strange orbment readings deep below the castle, which was thought to be connected to an artifact. Following on, she shares the story of how Cassius was a massive help during the 100 Days' War with Erebonia, and ultimately his assistance most likely led them to survival. Ultimately, the death of his wife was the reason why he left the military, and all this information Estelle wasn't even aware of. Queen Alicia ends their meeting by making a request to save her granddaughter, who's being held hostage at the Erebay royal villa. She's aware that Colonel Richard and Duke Dunan are behind this, and are ignoring her request as they are planning a coup d'etat. The next day, Estelle, Joshua, and Jin begin recruiting bracers in the area with the assistance of the First Lieutenant Schwarz to plan how they will save the hostages. Now, a lot of characters here are introduced. I'm not going to give them a bio until the recap of Sky's second chapter, as they are kind of more important there, but we do have some familiar faces as minor NPCs as you play the game. So I'll follow back up with these guys. And after raiding the villa, Estelle comes face to face with Princess Claudia, who turns out to be Chloe, who they met back in Chapter 2. And as a last resort, the Intelligence Division hold a hostage at gunpoint, but luckily Scheherazade and Olivier are able to get the upper hand and prevent the hostage from getting hurt. The group continues to liberate the castle from the Intelligence Division to try to save the Queen, but it's the Second Lieutenant Lawrence who stands in the way. And it's thanks to YouTube user OceanGate for this footage. Thanks again, OceanGate. And also, it is very important to note that during this plan of saving the hostages, Estelle and Joshua have split up, so Joshua is not here to see this happen. And also, I wanted to bring note to the absolutely fantastic song that plays with this character. It is called Silver Will, and I'm going to play a section of the arranged version now because it is just so good. Okay, I'm going to stop it there. Big thanks to Falcom Music Channel. That is the name of their channel that is hosting this copy of the song. This has been voted numerous times as like people's favorite song through the entire series, so it is definitely one of my favorites, and I like to show it off whenever possible. With that, everyone regroups and heads towards the depths of the castle to meet with Colonel Richard and stop his plan. After catching up to him, Richard explains that compared to Erebonia and Caliber, Liberal is a small country with limited military power. Therefore, by obtaining the power of one of the Seven Septarian, Liberal could wield the power to prevent a war like the 100 Days' War from ever happening again. However, Joshua questions Richard, as there's no way he should possess the knowledge that he has. But just like with Don Capua and Mayor Delmore, he can't remember the source of the information. After fighting Richard, the Black Orbment activates and an archaism called a Reverie approaches them with the goal to kill them. Even with the group and Richard attacking the Archaism, it won't stay down. It's only until Cassius appears at the last moment until the day is saved. After everything settles down, Cassius knocks some sense into Richard for his hunger for power and idolization of himself, as he explains that he himself was not the reason the world sought to survive the war, but rather the cooperation of everyone in the military. Celebration. Now a week later, the Queen celebration is in full swing, and Estelle and Joshua finally receive their final recommendation from Elnon, who promotes them to senior bracers. We also learn that Lawrence is the one who sent the black ornament to Cassius, and upon describing his looks to Joshua, he's shocked. But we put that aside for now, as we have a celebration coming up. And then a big thanks to Zakaron121 for this video, and we will close out first chapter with this. All right, and that is the end of Sky first chapter. Quite a cliffhanger, and one of the most evil cliffhangers, I think, I've seen in the series. Right, there are some other cliffhangers that this series gives that are on the same level, I would say, especially in the Cold Steel arc. But for now, that's going to be it. There are some things that we're going to kind of go back over in future titles. I just wanted to give a base level of the story and some important things. But before we go on, there are some topics that I want to cover that are actually in the beginning of my Sky second chapter PowerPoint that I really should have introduced in this one. So let me do those real quick. Okay, right, sorry. I thought it was in my Sky SC recap PowerPoint, but it was actually my Zero and Azure recap document. So before we go, I'm going to talk about some things that have been brought up and are going to be very important moving forward, but we're going to talk about it now. This is Adios, the goddess of the sky. Adios is the central figure of the Septian Church. Unlike most RPGs, the Church is not this ultra-villainous faction in concept, though people are not infallible and are prone to failure and corruption like any other. So the Church is not inherently bad, and the people who worship and who are strong in their faith aren't inherently corrupt, but there are people who are, there are people who are, there are people who aren't. And Adios is generally seen as a benevolent force. Adios has created 7 Septarians as treasures unto humanity, divine entities that inhabit the 7 elements of magic throughout the world. In addition, Adios also created holy beasts. These are divine beings created to protect and oversee the Septarians. They are not intended to interfere with humanity, except in the case for the danger to Septarians. And in Trails in the Sky FC, Alan Richard, under the control of Weissman, the Faceless, sought the Oriole, the Golden Ring. And as of this point, the Oriole is the only Septarian that we know of, and as we go further along in this recap section, we will be learning more about these other Septarians. And next, I just want to quickly add, in Sky first chapter, and we'll talk about more of this in second chapter, we have a side quest chain that involves finding important artifacts stolen by Phantom Thief B, where we solve various riddles to find the location of the object that has been stolen. It is always intact and seems to be just a testing sort of method of whoever decides to test. In Sky SC, this character is confirmed as being named Blue Blanc, and he's actually an enforcer for the Society of Ouroboros. He doesn't appear in person in Sky FC or in Zero Azure, and we will be seeing definitely more of him in Cold Steel, but we do have his Phantom Thief side quest in both games, so I wanted to bring him up. Also, okay, and the last bit I have here is this chart that I made to track the members of Ouroboros and how their society works, because it is pretty confusing with all of the different terms and ranks going around and all the number of characters that we're going to be seeing that are going to be confirmed as these. So right now we have the Grand Master at top, and we have the Anguisses, the 7 Anguisses below, and then below that are the Enforcers, of which there are a larger amount of. And the ones we know so far are Weissman, the Faceless, for the 3rd Anguis here. We have Lieutenant Lawrence, who is the 2nd Enforcer, Enforcer number 2. And then we have Joshua, who is Enforcer number 13. So as we go and learn more about these different members of Ouroboros, we're going to be filling out this chart. So with that, that is the end of this recap, and I'm going to be hard at work to record the recaps for Sky second chapter, Sky the third, Zero, and Azure, as I have all of those made up PowerPoint-wise. I'm currently making the Cold Steel PowerPoint as we speak. So if you like that, and you like other Trails things, I have a playthrough of Trails through Daybreak on my channel that's going now. And if you like other things, I also have explained content for Xeno. I've done a PowerPoint recap style like this for Xenosaga, and more is obviously to come. So with that, check you guys next time.